on the right as well. And some even acknowledge it. All of the incels seem to understand that there are some significant problems that need to be dealt with, but there are very few powerful, prominent people that admit their own struggles. And so credit to John Fetterman for that. That said, JR, you had some issue with this, I think?
That back and forth it was great. I don't have issue with that. That was hilarious. But no, the other thing is just, we're talking about Dianne Feinstein and her not being there and all that. Not that he shouldn't, but if it comes to the point and he's dealing with medical issues and these are serious things as he's pointed out, but the point of electing John Fetterman is because he has great ideas, he has good energy, he has ways he can talk to folks, and maybe he can talk about sway the debate and get things passed that people that wanted him to be there, he's not doing, not by his own fault, but we need him, right? And if he's not there, it's like he's not doing what we need him to do, and not by his own fault. But just if it continues to a point where he can't do it for an entire term or something like that, we miss an opportunity to do the things that he wants to get done. That's my only issue. Okay. I'm glad he's back and returning because that is actually the main focus here. I just didn't know how long it was going to be.
Sure, yeah. Look, and I think my guess would be that if this became such a recurring problem that he couldn't do his job, hopefully he would at that point step down. But I think that even in not being there, it does put a focus on something that rarely gets talked about. And so I think there's potentially help to that too. And he went for the time that he felt he needed. He came back now. We'll evaluate as we're going forward. But I understand what you're saying.
He'll be good. I'm glad he's back.
Me too. And the video was fun. Hopefully we don't get a strike for that. Actually, we should probably have the music, the sound sort of fade out at the end there when it's just the sound. I'm a little bit worried about that now, actually, Mike, if we could note that. Anyway, with that said, in just a sec, we're gonna move on to our last story with a few minutes remaining. I do wanna say, May Money to Building says in a super chat, JR, Draymond got suspended for game 3. They act like he stomped him out like the Undertaker. Let's get the Dubs and Clippers to the finals. You lost me with the sports talk, but you brought me back a little bit with the Undertaker.
I've been guilty ever since I said it, May. I've been rooting for your Warriors. It came to me. Yes, Draymond he's getting screwed. He's getting hosed.
That's what I think. Anyway, Arthur Ashbrook says in super chat, John, you should go on the watch list on Wednesdays. I do like the idea of that, but I also do the main show on Wednesdays, and that would be a lot, but we'll see. Swidane Dragon with a great point. The total number of humans on Earth has doubled since modern contraceptives. Exactly, it's just boneheaded nonsense is all that it is from him. And Red the Calico Cat Dragon says, don't insult Pokemon like that. Good point, sorry. Okay, are we ready to go, Mike? Ready to go? Stand by, it's time for some AI.
I'll be back. Hasta la vista. Calculating cyber operations. Sorry, John. I'm afraid I can't do that.
There's a lot of fears about the jobs that might fall by the wayside with AI coming in and knocking humans out of their positions, but is pet sitter the next big one we should be worried about? Well, there's a new smart device called Companion that bills itself as the all-in-one nanny and tutor for your dog. You can see a shot of it right here. It's supposed to stimulate and entertain your dog while you work or run out to buy grain-free artisanal dog food, our producer wrote, which I think is hilarious. We have a little promo for how the device is supposed to work, so why don't we go to that?
Introducing Companion, your dog's new friend that uses computer vision and artificial intelligence to provide hours of productive play and constant health monitoring. Give your dog the gift of joy by reserving Companion at joincompanion.com.
So to give you a little bit more information, because what's shown in the video is interesting, but it's very limited. It can apparently see when your dog sits. Obviously, it's gonna have to do more than that. It is stationary. It dispenses treats. It, quote, provides all day scheduled and on-demand engagement for your dog with games, behavioral programs, and training. Simultaneously monitors your dog's health, looking for sudden or subtle shifts in your dog's movement or posture that can indicate pain, anxiety, or stress. And it uses AI to help teach them commands and play games with them. All of that theoretically could be good. You know, you don't want to leave your dog for a long time and have them be lonely or whatever. But I also know, like, I've played, my wife's dog is obsessed with her, obsessed. When I play my wife's voice through her phone to the dog acts as if she has never heard her before, ever. Those voices don't seem to have any effect on a dog. So I'm not sure how successful this is gonna be. Also, it's stationary. The dog can just walk away. Like, it can just go on the couch and ignore it. I'm not saying that the product won't have a use or whatever. It's not coming out until May 2024. And I like the idea, but it just seems like TVs and speakers don't seem to have an effect on dogs. So I'm not sure how exactly this would. What do you think?
John, why are you hating on this new product? I mean, we had one of those things that spits out a treat if we want to and talk to it similarly, and has a little camera and you see what Sprocket's doing. He doesn't like it. We also have this Roomba that rolls around the house and vacuums. He hates that damn thing. He's afraid of it. So maybe it's for certain dogs that are high strung and like to interact with weird box machines, but some dogs just don't. So okay, maybe there's a market for it. But the other thing about the adding the health thing, it teaches them sort of the companionship is the one thing. We leave the TV on if he's there. Maybe he can entertained by it, whatever. There's also a dog channel on like DirecTV. I don't know what type of dog's watching. I heard about this a few years ago. All this stuff to make your dog have more comfortable alone time, which I understand because I feel bad leaving the dog by himself. But all this stuff about how it's gonna trace his heart rate, whether or not he's breathing right, the third and the fourth thing. Come on, bro. We're just adding that stuff to make sure that we have some reason to sell this product because it's just to keep your dog company. It doesn't have to monitor whether or not he's gonna choke on his spit while he's hanging out at home alone. Calm down. If he was gonna die off that, he'd do it at another time. He'd have done it by now. Calm down. Just saying.
Yeah. Anyway, look, I do think that there is going to be a market for these sorts of things to provide companionship generally. I don't know about for dogs. I don't know if that's what dogs really want. I do think eventually though, for people, maybe for kids, for older people, I think that eventually you are going to see AI personalities that have a role. I think that within 5 years, 10 years, 20, I don't know exactly how long. I'm not a genius like Elon Musk, but I do think that that's gonna be a thing. I think it might be a little bit tougher on the dogs though, but I would love to be proven wrong. So companion, bring your best. With that said, that is unfortunately all the time we have for the show today. Thank you, Jared Jackson, as always, for joining me.
Absolutely, thank you guys, good times.
Everyone can check out JR on the watch list coming up in just a little bit. Indisputable is gonna be up next. Also wanna remind you tomorrow is the members hangout for tier 3 members on YouTube. So if you are one, please schedule that time. It's half an hour from basically now, but tomorrow, it's in the future. And you can become a member if you'd like to take part. With all that said though, stay safe out there, stay sane out there. I'll see you soon.
Welcome to Indisputable. I am Sharon Reed, and for Dr. Rashad Ritchie, and Bennie Carollo is here once again. I feel like I just left you. It's always great to be on with you, and it's going to be a great show. And I know you're going to have some interesting commentary. I think we should, Bennie, jump right into it and begin in Hollywood with a question, really, because we don't know how much longer Jonathan Majors is going to be part of any Hollywood scene. It seems like every day, every hour, something else drops off of his plate, something lucrative. So here's what's going on. Majors has been dropped by his management team, which is huge, his publicist as well. And now another blow for the Creed 3-star, Jonathan Majors, amid domestic violence charges that we've been detailing for you, the allegations. More and more projects are severing ties with the actor, despite text released from his criminal defense attorney. Remember those? That showed the woman he had the altercation with seemingly taking the blame for their fight. Jonathan Majors has been dropped from a slew of projects since. We're learning on good authority, including Protagonist Pictures, the feature adaptation of the Walter Mosley novel, The Man in My Basement, an ad campaign for the Texas Rangers Major League Baseball team, as well as an unannounced film, 5th season's Otis Redding biopic, which the Emmy-nominated actor was circling. All great projects. Now, Majors is facing domestic violence allegations out of New York City after a March 25th incident involving a dispute with a 30-year-old woman. The unnamed victim was taken to the hospital with minor injuries to her head and neck, according to authorities at the time of the incident. Majors is scheduled to appear in court on May 8th after being charged by the New York City District Attorney. Now, just earlier in the year, Majors was on top of the world, the other side of the headlines, having a standout 2023 with Creed 3, Ant-Man 3, grossing a combined $745 million worldwide. The bad news just keeps rolling in for the actor. Just earlier in the week, as we said, the management team drops him, the publicist as well. However, 2.5 Men actor Charlie Sheen, and I do think this is a fair comparison, right? This was what Deadline put up for their little ticker at the top of the website. So 2.5 Men actor Charlie Sheen, who has surely a tumultuous history riddled with domestic violence, substance abuse, and a host of legal struggles, just announced yet another TV show. Seems Charlie Sheen has never stopped working. Always on the A-list, no matter what he does. In fact, I think they crave it when he does bad things, allegedly. Some proven. In casting news, sure to make headlines and turn How to Be a Bookie instantly into one of the most anticipated new series of the year. Sheen is set for a recurring role in the single-camera comedy headlined by Sebastian Maniscalco. Hails from 2.5 Men studio, Warner Brothers Television, which also means that even when you mess up with Warner Brothers, if you're Charlie Sheen, they'll have you back. And I can't wait to have reports about the contract and the money that he's going to make on this. It's going to be huge, I'm sure. So now let's just take a look at some of the other headlines involving Sheen, though, over the years, because there's so many to get into. They go on. Charlie Sheen arrested for domestic violence. Charlie Sheen to Denise Richards. I am going to sever your head and mail it to your father. That's interesting. Wow. Charlie Sheen sued for assault, sexual battery by dental technician. Charlie Sheen's wife claims knife threat and assault. Landing the role on Chuck Lorre's How to Be a Bookie comes 12 years after Lorre's dramatic falling out with the 2.5 Men star, where Sheen's public meltdown, verbal attacks led to Lorre's firing. Now the two have reunited and they seem to be back in business again. And so, Bennie, I'm all for people finding their way back to each other, falling in love again even. Do whatever you want to do. I make no conclusion, draw no conclusion about Jonathan Majors and what did or didn't happen in that car in New York City with the woman. I know what it looks like, and some things seem like textbook, okay? And I'll put a period after textbook and won't insert another word. Hollywood, just like the rest of society. It just seems like there's this, I don't know, unequal treatment. What say you?
No, 100%. And it's all part of like really this larger trend. So like first and foremost, there's just this selective accountability that is constantly pushed in our society, right? There's a selective accountability. It's especially predominant in like Hollywood. And you'll notice that certain features, I mean, let's be real. If you're privileged and you're white, like you're going to have a million people who are like bending over backwards saying, oh, what about a redemption arc? What about, can't people have character growth in these things? And this is actually where I kind of want to get into like a lot of people really like just absolutely mangle and abuse like abolitionist frameworks and like theoretically progressive language on how we work towards accountability in like non-carceral forms. What people always forget about like an abolitionist framework when it comes to justice and like restorative justice, rehabilitative justice, is that the first step is always somebody being removed from any potential position of power that they could possibly use to be harmful in one way or another. If you are not doing that, then there's no rest of the process that can even reasonably happen. If people are allowed to hold the positions of power that they have, well, then they're allowed to continue to cause harm to other people. And so they aren't going to have like the real incentives to actually change their behavior, to actually grow as people and have actual like reconciliation. And so that's one of those things where you'll notice, right, that some people, when it comes to accountability, get the book thrown at them. And then other people, you have people who just want to completely, immediately jump to, oh, what about rehabilitation? What about a personal growth and all these things? And it's just very, very frustrating to see language from theoretically like progressive movements, right, to see language that is quite literally just taken out of the mouths of abolitionists and then twisted in such a way to actively support white supremacist aims.
You make so many valid points with this selective, accountability. I don't know that Charlie Sheen, Benny, ever got a timeout unless it was self-imposed. Remember when he was like standing on top of buildings talking about tiger blood and, whoever he was arguing with. But some of this stuff is really serious. It's really serious. And it doesn't sound like Hollywood ever slapped him down. Do you think that because he's also a Nepo baby that, Martin Sheen is beloved and seems like a decent guy from, outside looking in, this is his son? And so did that perhaps save him? Because Johnny Depp would say, well, I was blackballed from some things. I got strong feelings about that one too, but I'll let you talk.
I don't know who Martin Sheen is. I don't know.
I love you. Okay. I love you. Okay. And somebody, we've got this crack, Dr. Richie has this crack investigative team behind the scenes, and they're good for information. But didn't Martin Sheen play the president or something on that show? They'll get us the answer. Martin Sheen is a beloved Hollywood star. I'm getting a thumbs up. And he played in whatever that series was, but it was wildly popular. I didn't watch it. Surely you didn't either. Okay. But this is why I love you. Suffice to say, when your daddy's on the A-list in Hollywood, that could maybe have an effect on whether you receive any comeuppance. No? I don't know who Martin Sheen is. I love it.
But yeah, definitely having A-lister parents, I think, can carry you a long way.
Oh, you're beautiful. I just think you want to move on, don't you? Well, let's move on. It's okay. It's okay. We'll keep seeing how this Jonathan Majors story plays out and if he'll ever work again. And I think that's a fair question at this point. Will he ever work again? And then do some of the comparisons. Well, I'm not advocating for him to get something or to not be pulled from something. I'm just saying, is Hollywood fair? No. Now the Netflix beef stars, showrunners, silent on David Choe. Do you know what's going on with David Choe? Because a lot of people are talking about this one. Wildly talented artist, musician, celebrated actor now on the Netflix show Beef. David Choe has sparked outrage by detailing how he raped a Black woman in a recently resurfaced 2014 podcast. And no, we're not going to let you hear it. He wouldn't dare let you hear it now, but he did say these things and apparently doesn't want to own them and is now kind of intimating that, well, it's just, one of those things that I was joking about, half truth, whatever. 2014, Choe had a podcast called DVD ASA. He graphically describes forcing a Black woman masseuse into sexual activity during a massage session. Here's the transcript of the podcast spoken by Choe while he was at a massage parlor attended by a therapist named Rose. So I just take her hand and I put it on my genitals, and she just holds it there, he told co-host and adult film actress Asa Akira. Before saying it was horrible and adding she wasn't doing it, he continued to describe the encounter, saying the therapist definitely wasn't into it, but that she was not stopping it either. Choe said he pushed the woman's head down, forcing her to provide oral sex. Yeah. The comments received instant backlash by co-host and adult film star Asa Akira. Ew, you're basically telling us that you're a rapist now. Well, Choe replies to that, yeah, before answering the other guest questions about the masseuse's appearance. What is wrong with you guys, Akira asked. Who cares what she looks like? Dave is telling us he's a rapist, a successful rapist. Choe then laughs because rape is apparently funny to some people. The Center for Pacific Asian Family and South Asian Helpline and Referral Agency sharply criticized the actor and social norms surrounding this event. Choe's story reflects the harsh reality that men and women alike continue to believe and perpetuate the dangerous myth that coerced sexual activity is not considered assault or rape. By legal definition, you are committing an act of sexual assault when you do not receive consent. The organizations wrote in a statement. Based on Choe's telling, the masseuse's repeated protests, in addition to his physical coercion, indicate that she was not consenting to the acts he requested. The confession also received a plethora of backlash on Twitter. And you know that they go in on Twitter. David Choe's rape confession is shocking to me. Like, the culture we live in is horrific, but to think you can just graphically detail how you raped someone and still wind up on starring in this TV show, jail for everyone involved. Wow. However, much of the backlash was moderated by Choe himself, who was listed as the copyright holder and party requesting the takedowns, which is why we can't let you listen to it. You see it there. Withheld, copyright holder. Choe has now claimed that the story is fictional, as we said, since waking to a sea of heavy criticism. That didn't happen. I just made it up. Well, who even thinks like that? That's a question I want to ask you, Benny, but I'll go on for a moment. 2014 episode, I relayed a story simply for shock value that made it seem as if I had sexually violated a woman. Though I said those words, I did not commit those actions. It did not happen, he said to NBC News' Kimmy Yam. While Choe's actions attempt to convince people that the allegations are false, Griot writer Monique Judge had this to say. The issue isn't whether or not the story is true. The issue is why use Black women as your punching bag. You owe victims of sexual assault an apology. You owe Rose an apology. You owe every woman who has ever been afraid to come forward with the story of her sexual assault an apology. You owe Black women an apology. Let's get to it, David Choe. Netflix and the cast of Beef have remained silent on the matter thus far. However, details have surfaced about Choe's role, which was attained due to his personal friendship with the creators, but was originally meant for actor Stanley Tucci. He was talking about being abandoned by his family, and I was like, the way he's talking about it just feels so Isaac, Lee says, adding that Choe happens to be friends with these creators. So, Benny, do we need to discuss, debate whether the truth or fiction of this Rose character and these horrific storytelling, these allegations, do we need to even know if it's true or not to weigh in on how gross it is?
I mean, I guess it cuts two ways because, like, on some level, it, I guess, does, from like a legal justice standpoint, matter a little bit as to whether or not it's true. I mean, I don't know what statutes of limitations are, but then again, the reality is, unfortunately, in the United States of America, sexual assault is not something that gets prosecuted very often. Unfortunately, the overwhelming majority of cases, police won't even investigate, even if you do report it, but even more don't even get reported in the first place. But then the question of whether or not it matters if it's true, the fact is, this is what's going on in this person's head. And that right there is part of a larger problem. The fact that somebody is comfortable telling a story like that, the fact that somebody thinks that telling a story like that would be good content for a podcast, the thought that they thought that other people on that podcast would be receptive to that as though it's normal. The unfortunate reality is a lot of people are willing to accept that as normal. The unfortunate reality is there's a reason why. The fact that he is willing to tell stories like that, and the fact that so little accounts of sexual assault actually get reported or actually get prosecuted are really the same issue at the core. It is because our society fundamentally still treats women like they should just be the property of men. And especially true when it comes to Black women in our society, who are even further dehumanized by the white supremacist justice system that we have and the white supremacist culture that we are living in. And so fundamentally, there's this constant dehumanization and sexualization of women more broadly, especially Black women, and throw on top of that all of these different layers of misogyny, throw on top of that the layers of people wanting to sound edgy, like these men who want to sound like they're some sort of tough guy, and then quite literally start putting out stories like this. And it's just absolutely horrific. And it is so shameful that anybody telling a story like this could get any job on anywhere, much less in Hollywood, where they're going to have some sort of public influence. And it's just deeply disgusting, and speaks to a larger issue in our society. Where femininity more broadly is seen as something that is lesser than, and something that is, easily violated without any type of really concern for humanity, I guess. I don't know. There's a million layers to this, and
There's
this is
so
a really
many.
disgusting story.
It really is. And you know what else I think that Black women, and perhaps all women to some degree, get punished for after they are victimized by these abusers in this kind of way? When a woman isn't believed, moves on, pulls it together, presents well enough, is seemingly okay enough, the next punch to the gut is, it was not that big of a deal. And you didn't file a police report or whatever else they can come up with. And I wonder your thoughts on that, because it's like you get punished over here just because of who and what and how you were born. And then you get punished over here for surviving the victimization and the assault. And I just think none of this was funny. And the giggles from Choe back then, and the lack of remorse in the statement today. Maybe I missed it, Bennie, maybe you heard it. But I think that even though it was almost 10 years ago, it's today for him. He can be judged by it today.
Most definitely, 100%, because we're still facing with the same issues today. We're still fundamentally facing the same issues today. And this goes to something that I think I was talking with you about last week, about default perspectives, where quite literally our society is not trained to view the world through the lens of women, right? Through women's eyes, right? We are trained to, by default, always only ever look through the perspective of men, to the point where there's just this systemic dehumanization and complete disregard for how women experience life. And so it's so infuriating when people are survivors. Very often they said, oh, well, it can't be that bad if you move forward. But no, it can actually be that bad. We shouldn't be putting burdens on people who are victimized, right? Fundamentally, we need to have real systems of support. But it's all this self-justifying system, because we know on the front end people aren't immediately believing. We know that on the front end that people are not believing when they're victimized. And then after the fact, when we force people to recover on their own without any support, then turn around and say, oh, well, if you manage to recover, then obviously that must mean it wasn't that big a deal. That really is just a self-justification for the lack of action from the lack of action from everybody else around in that situation, right?
Yeah.
From our justice system, from people in the community, you name it. Because the truth of the matter is, if somebody's a victim of sexual assault, odds are it is somebody that knows them, right? Most of the time. And a lot of people are unwilling to have the tension, the discomfort of calling out somebody that they know personally because somebody else they know was victimized. And it is that discomfort, that fear of little bit of discomfort that actively puts people in danger. And if you think you're uncomfortable calling out somebody that you know, think about how uncomfortable the victims are knowing that you're unwilling to call them out.
Yeah, and look at the debate, because I'm going to move on, but the debate is like, well, should he have to lose everything? It's like, should he have to lose everything? What he's doing work-wise is a privilege, not a right. Women have a right. Everybody has a right to their own body. That's a right. Okay, it's just not respected. But we'll move on, because out of New York City, this is scary. Parking garage that collapsed right there, one dead. Very, very treacherous situation there. And then you begin to think, what more? How stable are things? Here's what we know. One person dead, multiple injured in a deadly New York City parking garage collapse that happened in Lower Manhattan on Tuesday afternoon. I want you to watch this.
They're climbing up. You see them? Yeah. They're searching.
Oh my God, why am I emotional right now?
Because this is tragic.
Bro, what the fuck? Bro, I hope nobody died.
I don't think anyone died.
Insane. I hope no one's hurt. Yeah, there was someone stuck on the fire escape outside. They got down.
Oh, that's good.
Oh no.
Well, you heard one of the witnesses to some of this say, I don't think anybody died. Again, one person died in this New York City parking garage collapse. Took place on Ann Street near Nassau Street around 4 p.m. when, according to senior FDNY officials, the second floor of a 5-story parking garage collapsed into the first floor. Ultimately, the top floor would fall all the way down into the cellar in this pancake collapse, and screams for help could be heard in a cell phone video taken by a witness. Officials confirmed one person, a worker in the building, died in that collapse. FDNY Chief of Fire Operations, there he is, John Esposito, said this: as far as we can tell, so far there were 6 patients, 6 workers in the building at the time of the collapse. One worker was trapped on one of the upper floors. The FDNY was able to evacuate that person across the roof of another building. He was taken away from there. One worker died, 4 others were hospitalized, but were expected to recover. Esposito said one of the victims could be seen taken away on a stretcher. Another worker refused medical attention at the scene. Very scary stuff. NBC News among those reporting this. Esposito described the rescue operation as, quote, extremely dangerous due to the unstable building, and firefighters who had initially entered the building were forced to retreat as a result of the risk of instability. The department sent a newly added NYPD robotic dog known as DigiDog into the building to analyze the scene, make sure no one else was inside without putting in jeopardy the safety of first responders. Drones were also being used to get additional information from the scene, according to Esposito. Although Esposito said first responders believed everyone is accounted for, they will continue to search for any person, that's just horrific to think about, possibly trapped in the crushed cars or amid the concrete rubble of the collapsed garage. NYC Department of Buildings Acting Commissioner Kazimir Valenchik described how the drone footage showed how the 4-story building all the way pancaked, collapsed all the way to the cellar floor. There's more. He acknowledged that an active violation on the building dated to 2003. Buildings commissioner said an application was filed in 2010, but did not indicate whether that violation was corrected. There are some active permits on the building, one related to electrical work on the premises. Valenchik added, promising more details at a later time. That from Fox News. Our engineers deployed and are currently checking adjoining buildings and observing footage from drone pictures to identify possible reasons for the collapse. We're going to continuously review and research property profiles to understand the history of the building, certificate of occupancy, and all other records, and I will update this information. NYC Department of Buildings records show that the parking garage located at 57 Ann Street had 19 violations that had been completed or defaulted on, and another 4 that remained open, requiring a certificate of correction. WABC reported that the same parking garage owned by 57 Ann Street Realty Association, based in Great Neck, New York, had 64 violations with the Department of Buildings dating back to 1976. This is a tragedy, and I don't know that we know the proportions yet. We do know that one person lost their lives. Okay, but so that's one building worker. But when you talk about a history of such violations, and again, we don't know what caused all this, but it reminds me, not on the same scale when it comes to the mortality rate, but that condo collapsed down in Florida on the beach, and they learned about maintenance that wasn't done and all kind of violations. And I guess what I'm saying, Benny, is what good is there to have this department that oversees these things if the worst happens and we still don't know if work was completed on time or at all?
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate reality is all across the country, the number one priority is not necessarily like the safety or structural soundness of any particular building, but the profitability for real estate investors. And that is really always the way that it's been in the United States. I mean, real estate investors are some of the biggest donors to political campaigns on both sides for a reason. And so, while yes, we do have infrastructure in place to make sure that there are like building codes that are being met, unfortunately, you see a lot of buildings across the country that face a lot of neglect. Not to say that the violations that existed were necessarily the cause of the collapse, because we obviously don't know the cause of the collapse, but in general, speaking generally about the structural soundness and safeness of buildings across the country, there is a long-term pattern that exists of different building violations not being taken super seriously by city councils, not being like super investigated, of money and resources not really going into making sure that places are safe. All of these things are sort of systemic problems that are, really stemming from the underlying root problem that we fundamentally allow landlords and real estate investors to have too much political power and influence in this country. So long as we are making decisions, at the electoral level about what is going to be the most profitable for real estate investments, we are always going to be missing things when it comes to safety and things like that.
Wow. I think it's well said. Again, there's a lot more that we need to learn here, and we'll keep following it. But you just feel for people who just went to work that day. Some will get back to their loved ones injured, and then mentally, how would you feel if you were part of that? But at least one is never coming home. This is Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie. He has the day off. I'm Sharon Reed in for Dr. Rashad. And Bennie Carollo joins us, breakdown contributor. We'll be right back.
Every day, the Young Turks delivers 2 hours of solid, fact-based, timely news and progressive commentary on all the day's most important stories. We keep our viewers informed while also providing perspective and insight on the news we cover, so you understand not only what's happening, but also what's happening behind the scenes, the stories behind the stories.
We play musical chairs and put these children in one awful detention facility to the next. That's what's happening at the border.
The things that got him banned, he's still spreading. So presumably, I think it's reasonable to say that if you allow him back on the website, he's going to do it again.
Any legal voter that we deem not willing to vote for my side shouldn't vote because it'll replace me that's supposed to vote for my side. That's not how voting works. That's not how democracy works.
And while many people following today's political news can get discouraged about the direction of the nation and the world, that's not us. At TYT, we're genuinely optimistic about the future, and with good reason. Today, wide majorities of Americans agree with our progressive stances on issues ranging from healthcare and education to climate, immigration, and wages. The rising generation of young people are also overwhelmingly progressive in their political beliefs and policy objectives, and they're increasingly flexing their muscle as voters and activists to demand change from our elected officials. The traditional mainstream media is mostly AWOL. They, along with the government and many other cherished institutions, have been captured by corporate interests. Audiences sense that they're not getting the whole story, or even the truth from once trusted outlets, whether broadcasting cable TV news networks or national newspapers and magazines. The antidote is the Young Turks. Unlike mainstream corporate outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma, and we don't carry water for the Republican or Democratic parties. So watch us Monday to Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and join the thousands of progressives around the globe who tune in every day for TYT's unmatched, award-winning content and see what it's like to experience a news organization that only answers to you.
I don't care if you're Christian. In fact, I will fight for you to have your religious liberty and practice your Christianity. I believe in that. I don't believe in Christianity, which means that you do not get to dictate the way I live my life based on your religion. I don't care what the Bible says. You have every right in the world. All those women who identify with your religion have every right in the world to not get an abortion, to not take birth control, but they do not have the right to dictate my life and what I decide to do with my body. I don't care about your goddamn religion. I'm so tired of having nonstop conversations about what the Bible says. You live your life in the way that you interpret the Bible. Again, I don't care, but you don't get to take the Bible and tell me, well, the Bible says this in this chapter, in this verse. I don't care. I don't care, I don't believe in it, and I have the right, based on our Constitution, to not believe in it.
Walking a dog on the White House lawn, would that be?
People still don't know what the word feminist actually means. Not even that, people are still angered by the word.
People think feminist is a bad word, but it's not.
There are gradations, there are different ways. The people who are against gender equality love to use like militant feminists as the representatives of all feminists. It's untrue.
I don't know why you'd be threatened by strong women unless you were an incredibly weak man. If you don't have equal rights, or you're not treated the same way, well, wouldn't you be angry?
Welcome back to Indisputable. I'm Sharon Reed, and for Dr. Rashad Ritchie, who has the day off, Bennie Carollo joins us, host of Bleep Blomp. I still want to say Benny, but Bleep Blomp Ben, as well as Breakdown contributor. Love having you on. Great discussion. Let's get some comments, Benny. TYT member, about the Netflix beef stars and the showrunners remaining silent on David Choe and that 2014 podcast where he thought it was so funny to joke about a rape that he now claims didn't happen. On the DOJ website, they admit that probably only 1 out of every 4 sexual attacks are reported because women are so abused when they report them, and that even when the rape is easily proven, most rapists get little to no prison time. Mickey C., the silver-haired dragon. We have to stop with this false accusations. Stop. People act like 1 out of 2 is, or more, most are false. It's not true. Women are abused. Thank you, Mickey C. 1 dead, multiple injured in the New York City. Oh no, let's go with Jonathan Majors now because you have strong reaction on that. Jonathan Majors dropped by management and PR team. Corey S2 says he's innocent until proven guilty. Tasty Cake, and I don't know how you feel about this comment, but make it. He should have chosen a better partner, but she legit destroyed his career. Shaking my damn head. I don't know, Tasty Cake. We don't know what happened in there, but who destroyed whose career? We'll see. One more. Will Williams says this is BS, double standard against black men. What about the guy who played the Flash? He's been in all kinds of domestic assault against women, but he has no problem playing Ant-Man. Okay. We'll move on because it is that time where we want to talk about this next story. A male Karen smashing beer cases at a Walmart. I wish a Karen would.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
I feel free! Back off!
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Bruh.
What the
Oh, that's why he's destroying the bush light. He's destroying the bush light, dude. What?
Woo! Good job.
And he leaves to cheers. Okay? Cheers. Oh, all the beer is spilled. I have no idea why so interested in this particular case, but Dustin D. Kane, the man seen smashing the beer in that viral video at a Walmart in Topeka, Kansas, has now been charged with exposing himself in public, according to Topeka police. The video has now been viewed over 5 million times. So much interest in this. The incident happened April 17th, 9 p.m. at the Walmart located at 1501 Southwest Wanamaker Road, according to police. Officers learned that an adult male identified as J. Dustin D. Kane, 44, of Topeka, was in the store throwing things at people. A lot. Video of the incident, which ends with Kane being let out of the Walmart by police, was shared widely on social media, with some users suggesting that his actions may have been part of the wider boycott against brewing company Anheuser-Busch after one of its brands, Bud Light, partnered with trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney for promotion. That's all it was, folks, a promotion. Okay? Some even said Kane had destroyed the wrong beer by smashing up cases of Busch Light. But the product is also made by Anheuser-Busch. Police said Kane was arrested, charged with criminal damage to property, felony battery, other charges, including exposing sex organs to another over the age of 16. Not clear if Kane's alleged exposure happened during the Walmart incident, and police have not disclosed a motive for the destruction of the beer. Benny, react to the footage, but also our collective interest in it. 5 million views of this. Why?
Yeah, I mean, it really speaks to the moment because, like, look, like, we need to really, like, understand that that whole ad campaign with Dylan Mulvaney, it happened, like, almost 3 weeks ago now at this point. It was for March Madness. It was for March Madness. We are, like, halfway through April, more than halfway through April, right? And so the right wing has completely lost its grip on reality because apparently just the reminder that a trans woman exists on a beer can is enough to send them into a frenzy. And I think one of the reasons why so many people are watching this right now is because, like, this is just a very clear moment of, like this conceptualizes, like, the entire right wing in this moment, where it's just this belligerent rage over something that has no effect on you by a person who himself is apparently accused of, was arrested for that indecent exposure, which is like literally what these people are trying to run around, like calling queer people groomers and stuff like that. And it is just the peak fragile masculinity that drives the Republican Party. And like one of the things that just really gets these right-wingers upset about the existence of trans people, trans women in particular, and why it really hit close to home to them for this beer, like on this beer can, is really because like fundamentally they have this conception of masculinity as something that's inherently superior and deserving, and that femininity is something that they only tolerate because they view women as baby factories and useful to them, right? And so the idea of somebody, like myself, a trans woman, saying, hey, actually femininity is pretty cool and is actually desirable and has value in and of itself, already just undermines their entire identity, their complete sense of self-importance that's built on literally just misogyny. And then throw a picture of a trans woman on a beer can for one ad campaign, and then all of a sudden what a lot of Americans think is a real symbol of masculinity, right, that is to say beer, and all of a sudden it's just a complete utter collapse, and they feel like something that should be entirely centered towards them for a brief moment isn't centering them. And like it's just this complete identity collapse for the Republican Party. And most people don't care, right? The overwhelming majority of people don't care. But for the few people that do, they have lost their grip on reality, and they have lost their ability to talk about or think about anything else. And it is honestly just speaks to how deeply unhinged the Republican Party is today, and how deeply unhinged right-wingers more broadly are today in their weird fixation on trans people.
It is unhinged, and I don't know if they were ever based in reality to begin with, because the existence and the world order is built on a lie. So the minute you're right, Benny, focus comes off, well, the lie becomes the truth to these people. And they start to, if you're buzzed anyway, what do you care? What do you care who's on the can? If you're sitting the idea with some of these people to get buzzed, leave people alone. Wow, I find it fascinating. Love is Blind contestants, this is fascinating too, are claiming abuse by production. A lot of people talking about this one. It follows the technical mishaps, delay of its season 4 live reunion special. The Netflix reality show Love is Blind has new controversy now. In a new report, multiple contestants spoke out about the conditions inside the Netflix series produced by Kinetic Content, claiming that they had been put through emotional warfare. On Love is Blind, young singles go on blind dates for 10 days, during which they must decide if they want to get engaged or go home. The couples only get to see each other once they're engaged. They're then sent on a group vacation before they're expected to return to their hometowns and plan their weddings. The show's high stakes leave a real-life impact on the contestants long after the show airs on Netflix. You thrust us into this situation without any support, and everything's amplified. Season 2, Nick Thompson said, it literally ruins lives. Wow. Season 2 contestant Danielle Rule stated she was surprised she passed the psychological screening since she'd allegedly disclosed a past suicide attempt. Rule, who married and then divorced Nick Thompson, claimed that during filming she tried to leave after having a panic attack, hiding in the closet and telling producers she didn't feel mentally stable enough to stay. Quoting, I kept telling them, I don't trust myself. I've tried committing suicide before. I'm having suicidal thoughts. I don't think I can continue in this. Season 1 contestant Danielle Druin alleged, quote, the sleep deprivation was real. I feel like they do it on purpose because they're trying to break you. They want you on your edge. The report also included claims that participants didn't have enough access to food or water. Isn't this a show about love? It sounds like some other show that where you survive. You're supposed to survive things, okay? But this show is all the rage, and a lot of people are talking about it, and now a lot of people are unpacking it. The latest story comes 10 months after former cast member Jeremy Hartwell filed a lawsuit against both the streaming service and production company. Inhumane working conditions were cited in the lawsuit. The lawsuit claims the contestants were paid around $7.14 per hour around half of California's minimum wage, since they regularly worked up to 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. Response for the production company behind the show, Kinetic Content, responded to the report, telling Variety in a statement, the well-being of our participants is of paramount importance to Kinetic. We have rigorous protocols in place to care for each person before, during, and after filming. While we will not speculate as to his motives for filing the lawsuit, there is absolutely no merit to Mr. Hartwell's allegations, and we will vigorously defend against his claims. Bennie, it sounds like from everybody else is doing a lot of talking here, there could definitely be merits to the claims here. This show and its production house has got to be getting rich or rich-esque off of this production. Why not treat people the right way? Or is that the secret sauce to producing this kind of reality television?
Yeah, I honestly think that it is kind of the secret sauce, unfortunately, because like, look, as somebody who like admittedly has watched all of these shows and the show The Ultimatum, which is hosted by the same two people, like these shows are evil, right? Like it's very, very clear that these shows are evil. Like if you watch them, you're like, wow, this is like there's no way that this show is like mentally healthy. And when you actually like, you know, start reading through like how this operates, and even if you just understand the general structure of the show, you recognize that the whole purpose of a reality show, especially like this one where the intention is to get somebody to marry somebody over an incredibly short period of time, you have to put people where you're creating a state of hyper reality, right? Where everything kind of feels like this is sort of the like defining feature of your life and kind of like nothing else exists. And like, honestly, like as somebody who was in the military, I got to say a lot of the vibe feels like when I was in like basic training, which is another situation of like hyper reality, where you live in a completely controlled environment with very clear objectives that you're supposed to be meeting. Everybody around you is also supposed to be meeting those same objectives. And like, so there's this sort of like shared sort of like intentional groupthink around, you have to go do this, you have to go on these 10 dates, you have to find somebody that you want to get married to. And like, you know, even just like pumping the brakes a little bit and being like, wait a minute. Should you be getting married to somebody? Maybe you should like hop on a Discord call with all your friends and say like, hey, is this person cool and normal? None of that's happening in an environment like this where it's so controlled. And then you throw something like alcohol on top of it and you've got like a completely different ball game. And it just like, it's very, very easy to see how a show like this could very, very much be the perfect environment for like just toxic behavior and manipulativeness, and could be incredibly damaging to people.
Wow, I find that your analogy there with basic training, I've never gone through it. So to hear you talk about it in that way and say this element is relatable, I find it wildly fascinating. But then it's so successful. And you and others are admitting to watching this. And yes, that's not the first time you use the word evil to go along with it. I think it's refreshingly honest. But then why not just at least pay them? You can't pay them for this trauma?
Yeah, no, most definitely. I mean, they're making a ton of money on a show like that. But that's kind of why reality shows are so big right now. Aside from the fact that, like, I think that they just announced a big writer's strike. So unfortunately, we might see a lot more reality shows coming up. Reality shows don't really quite require a ton in terms of writing. They're usually relatively cheap to run, you know, because you don't need as much when it comes to like the production efforts and stuff like that, generally speaking. And so one of the reasons why we see so much reality content today is because it's cheaper, is because one of the things that they're selling to contestants is, hey, you're like a random Instagram influencer. You want to be on TV? And people will come into that and not necessarily understand what they're worth, not necessarily understand what they're getting themselves into. And so reality shows really are like the perfect model for creating television under capitalism, because you find people who are desperate to be on TV, who don't know necessarily what they're getting into. The production is relatively cheap to actually do. And if the writers are going on strike and you have to worry about that, well then, hey, you've got a cast of people who are very replaceable every single season, and even from episode to episode can be replaceable because it's a reality show. And so it's like, it is a show that is designed very much for capitalism, where the only purpose is profit and exploitation.
Well, I'm for the contestants getting theirs. I once sat down with Mona Scott, this extraordinary producer, the Love and Hip Hop series. Others think she does that SWV versus Escape. And she said there's very few Cardi B's. Remember, Cardi B was on Love and Hip Hop, but she went with a purpose to push her brand and what she wanted to do, and then she got out of there. She escaped the island of reality television. I hope everybody stays well or gets well and gets the help and gets paid. 2 cheerleaders shot for approaching the wrong car. That's when we come right back. This is Indisputable. I'm Sharon Reed in for Dr. Rashad Ritchie. Bennie Carollo joins us now as a special guest co-host. We're right back.
Our audience has given us everything, so we couldn't be more connected. When we first started, people would start giving us directions and say, okay, the mics are too large, move them. Turn them into lav mics. I mean, they were incredible. And then one guy walked in and gave us a really expensive switcher and said, you guys need this, and walked out. Okay, it's amazing. They helped us build a studio. They did a $2 million funding campaign for us. And so they really are us. We do this show together to the point where some of our hosts are even former listeners. So when we say that the audience is part of TYT, we really mean it.
I think what the audience also appreciates is especially if they're members, they really get an inside look into who we are, our personal lives, what drives and motivates us. It goes beyond just storytelling. I think that what we do is allow our viewers and our listeners into our daily lives, and we give them kind of like this inside look into everything that we're passionate about and why it is that we're doing what we're doing, right? Like the motivation behind what we're doing, I think is important for our audience to know, and we're not shy about sharing that with them. And it's different from what people typically see in legacy media outlets where everything is kind of dry and robotic and there's really no personality or authenticity that comes along with it. Oftentimes when we're doing the show, I don't really think of it as me telling them stories. I think of it as us having a mutual respect and conversation with one another. And as I said earlier, I mean, not only do I feel that through the work I do, I'm informing our audience, but they inform me oftentimes as well. You know, they'll pitch stories to us. They'll tell us, you know, a certain perspective or angle to a story that we might have missed. And I love it.
Universal health care, raising the minimum wage, doing something about climate change and gun violence and an unjust justice system that locks up black and brown folks. We're not going for the okie doke no more.
I think Nina Turner is the leader of the progressive movement right now.
It is absolutely a sin and a shame to be in the 21st century in America and having people who are elected to office not only try to separate us, but also use public policy to make it harder to vote.
The questions that we get asked is what how you gonna pay for it? I said, oh, we're gonna pay for it the same way we pay for the tax cuts. That's how we're gonna pay for it. We're gonna pay for it in the same way that we give military industrial complex contractors. That's how we're gonna pay for it.
If standing up for universal health care or Medicare for all is wrong, Jink, I don't want to be right. If believing that working people deserve to have paid family and medical leave is wrong, I don't want to be right. If wanting everyday people of this nation to live a good life is wrong, then I don't want to be right.
And we are being tested whether we have courage enough, conviction enough, people power enough to stand up and do what is right for ourselves and generations yet unborn.
I'm Nina Turner, and I am unbought and unbossed.
Hi, I'm Bartholomew Joseph Kyle. I do audio for the main show, The Young Turks. I also do audio for Post Game. I started in 2006. I met Cenk Uygur at the Iraq for Sale screening that was directed by Robert Greenwald. And watching that, I want to figure out a way to be part of something that's genuine and authentic.
Welcome back to Indisputable. I'm Sharon Reed in for Dr. Rashad Ritchie. Let's get you some viewer comment. TYT members, a lot of you had something to say about the male Karen smashing all of those beer cases at Walmart. Why do this? Worst case scenario, Dragon says, thank you, Benny. I've been saying that forever. Transphobia is based in misogyny. Well, we really need that reminder about what's really going on here, okay? You can view that footage 5 million times, but you need to know what's behind it. So thank you, worst case. Lynn says, I bet Beer Karen worked up a thirst after that. Probably. You spilled all the drinks though, didn't you, fool? YouTube, Jen Hacks also says this about the male Karen. I don't like Bud Light, but hey, that's a waste of beer and big on stupidity. I agree, Jen, I agree. Now those cheerleaders. 2 cheerleaders shot for simply approaching the wrong car. None of this makes any sense, folks. None of it. 2 teenage cheerleaders, Peyton Washington, Heather Roth, were shot after one said she mistook the suspect's vehicle as her own in a supermarket parking lot near Texas's capital. Pedro Tello Rodriguez Jr. arrested for the shooting. The young women drove from the Round Rock area to Woodlands Elite Cheer Company in Oak Ridge 3 times each week to practice. They used the Elgin HEB as a carpool lot for the approximately 360-mile round trip. Just after midnight, cheerleader Heather Roth said she got out of her friend's car and opened the door to a vehicle she believed to be her own in the HEB parking lot. Okay, this happens. It's a mistake. So far, I've not heard anything weird here, okay? Nothing weird. Roth said there was a man sitting in the passenger seat, so she initially panicked, thinking a stranger was inside her car, got back into her friend's vehicle. When she noticed the man approaching their vehicle, she said she rolled down the window to apologize, telling him she thought it was her car. Roth said the man threw up his hands, pulled out a gun, and started shooting. Roth was struck by a bullet, but was treated and released at the scene. Peyton Washington was shot twice, badly injured, according to a GoFundMe spearheaded by her cheerleading company, Woodlands Elite Generals. Washington is stable, recovering in the ICU, according to the cheerleading company. Washington is doing well today after suffering from a ruptured spleen, which was removed. And she has damage to her pancreas and diaphragm. That from Lynn Cheer, the managing partner of that cheer program. That's what she told CNN. In upstate New York, Kevin Monahan, the man who's charged with fatally shooting 20-year-old Kaylin Gillis when she and 3 friends mistakenly drove down his driveway in search of a friend's house. Monahan was arrested on Sunday afternoon after holding up in his home for an hour and is being charged with second-degree murder. Why? Speaking with CNN on Tuesday, Washington County Sheriff Jeffrey Murphy said that Monahan has proven difficult and spoken about it very little with officials. When deputies arrived at his home on Sunday, he refused to speak with them, could only be extricated with the eventual assistance of the New York State Police Special Operations Response Team. Sheriff also noted that Monahan retained a lawyer before even leaving his home and has yet to make any statement about the situation. Monahan, quite frankly, has not shown any remorse in this case. This shooting makes this at least the 3rd incident this week in which young people who made an apparent mistake were met with gunfire. Here are the GoFundMe links for the victims. It's important we put them up, and many people are giving. Many people are giving. What they have in common? Simple. Young, innocent, if anything nefarious in these situations that led to this, and all victims. For what? And that's really, I need you to frame it, Benny, because it's not just the mistake. It's what the sheriff said in that last case. No remorse. If you just made a mistake, you would feel horrible, right? If you ran over a someone's pet that ran into the street, you feel horrible. If you're human, I think. No remorse. What do you make of any of this?
Honestly, it's hard not to immediately just blame like the political right and the type of environment that outlets like Fox News try to create. Because ultimately, what are they doing, right? They create this like deranged panic among their followers, right? They tell everybody that they need guns, that there's some sort of menacing threat. And then you have these people that are freaking out about the woke mob. That's a phrase they use all the time, woke mob, right? And who do they include in the woke mob? Like quite literally, they think young people just across the board are like all these like evil communists or whatever, right? We obviously know that they hate black and brown folks. We obviously know that they hate women. I mean, quite literally, these people cannot see like a female lead in a Marvel movie without freaking out. You know, they can't see a female Eminem without freaking out. I mean, for the love of God, it's a cartoon character, right? And so, like, fundamentally, when you take those people and then you have like an entire right-wing media space that is trying to like stoke up fears and say that there's going to be a civil war and try to like tell them that like, oh, they're coming for your house or whatever, you know, you're going to get burglarized all the time or whatever. Like all of this panic, right? Like this racist panic, this misogynistic panic, this fear about young people being too gay, right? All of these things stacked on top of each other when you already have like a group of people who are like, to be entirely honest, like Americans are not necessarily known for being the most stable folks like across the board. We don't really have like a great reputation when it comes to responsible gun ownership or just responsibility in general. You know, you push this main character syndrome, and like I can tell you, I've known a lot of people personally in my life that are convinced that they themselves are John Rambo. And unfortunately, there's an entire media space that is willing to indulge those sort of self-delusions. And so, yeah, like how could somebody like do something like this and not feel remorse? My guess is, right, and granted, this is a guess, but my guess is this person has been drinking all of this ridiculous right-wing Kool-Aid and like is unironically just terrified of basically leaving his house at this point.
It's to me why these stand your ground laws were created. You don't even really need that law. Why do you need a stand your ground law? If someone breaks into your home and they mean harm or death to you, your family, you can defend yourself. We don't need stand your ground. These laws were created so that you could get away with this kind of thing, so that you could blow human beings away, claim that you were in fear. So when a 16-year-old Kansas City Black teenager, ding dong, you can take a long time to answer and then shoot through the door. And when you hit that teenager, I think it was the left front forehead, and that teenager's on the ground, you're still in fear, it's delusional, and you shoot him again. It doesn't make any sense, and therefore it's nonsensical. I'll give you the last word. My heart breaks for what do you tell kids? I had someone ask me that. Do we now tell them, be careful of ringing the wrong doorbell? I don't think we can't keep telling them everything because there's just something else that pops up, Benny.
Yeah, I mean, like we're in an impossible situation because unfortunately we don't live in a democracy. Like fundamentally we do not live in a democracy. Look at states like Tennessee, for example. 8% of the entire voting age population is denied the right to vote due to prior felony voting laws, and we all know that a huge chunk of those is just ridiculous nonsense, war on drug charges, and like you know, throw that on top of our racist policing system. And so like fundamentally between all the gerrymandering, between all of the money that's in politics, between like all of the ways our system is rigged against actual democracy, like fundamentally, what do you tell people? I don't really know. Like, I don't really know, because most people are against what these people are doing. Most people want gun control. Most people want to move forward and progress, but we're just kind of stuck, I guess.
It's ironic because, you know, that there's that group of people that I don't think is as big as everyone makes it out to be, but they sure are disruptive. It says, we will take back our country. It's ironic. The other people need to take back the sense of humanity and dignity and life. That definitely needs to be taken back, but not in the way they're talking about. It is just utterly horrific. And I think the other point that I hear you making that I couldn't agree with more is, in this case, it is like a war against the young and this open-mindedness. Too many young people are getting it. What did the former governor, was Scott Walker, said? We got to keep them from voting. We got to indoctrinate them another way, paraphrasing. That's kind of what he said. We have to shake the decency out of these young people who believe that trans, so what? Let people live and love. Interracial dating. Remember, I mean, they just, won't they? Well, listen, you can only live so long. You can only live so long. And I wonder when some of this disgusting way of thinking, this mentality will die off. This is Indisputable. I'm Sharon Reed in for Dr. Rashad Ritchie. Much more to come.
Indisputable has been named the fastest growing news TV show in the United States of America, compared to all shows on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and roughly 30 others. What do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable. Donald Trump radicalized citizens. He's the chief terrorist. Republicans still want you to think that critical race theory is the greatest evil that can happen in K-12 education. It's not even taught. I guarantee you this, David. If he would have taken a knee during the national anthem to bring awareness to the need for more money for cancer research in America, he would not have had that response. It was the fact that he took a knee for black folk and brown folk. You rather pick the voters because you're scared of the voters picking the politicians. It frightens you. But we coming. When you are in a privileged position, equality looks like oppression to you. The Karenicity runs deep in this one. We provide a mirror for reflection and a mirror for correction. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Let's put up the graphic of this Karen in peak performance. Boom. They want anarchy so they can start creating their own rules.
Can you share with me some examples?
When they were running around during the terrorist attack on January 6th saying, hang Mike Pence. So those are the people I'm talking about. That's a problem, correct? You work for Mike Pence, stand up for the guy. Do not allow the ideology of politics to evaporate the humanity that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, so I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reformed in this country, so I won't stop. And you won't stop either.
Here at the Young Turks, we do our best to bring you the most essential news stories of the day, but we can't cover everything in a 2-hour show. And for the rest, I recommend Ground News. Founded by a former NASA scientist, Ground News uses a revolutionary system that analyzes where the news is coming from and gives you complete transparency on the potential biases these sources may have. That way, you can read between the lines of media bias and break free from the corporate media agenda. In arming you with the context and transparency, you'll have everything you need to think critically about the news and build responsible media literacy for yourself and others. With Ground News, you're not just mindlessly consuming the media, you're part of a movement that is working to hold them accountable and get straight to the facts. Break through the filter bubbles, the propaganda, and the bias, and subscribe to Ground News today.
Field goal here. It's time to switch to beer.
Oh, man.
Oh, God.
Do your best.
He's a little like... Let's go!
Oh. No one's happy now.
Give him another try.
Oh! Wow.
This is the weirdest game.
We've been around for about 20 years and we have about 20 billion views. Am I proud of that? Hell yeah, I am. We put out 20 billion messages in a bottle. Have we helped to move now 2 generations, millennials and Gen Z, to become progressive? Yes, those numbers are real. We moved generations. Were we the only ones? Of course not. but we have been the largest online news show for now decades.
Welcome back to Indisputable. I'm Sharon Reed alongside Bennie Carollo, who is a contributor to The Breakdown and 100% spot on with the commentary. And I can tell you that the TYT members agree with you about the two cheerleaders shot for approaching the wrong car. Swartznog, Mr. Stay-at-Home Dragon, says cheerleaders shot down in the street for approaching the wrong car. Rich old white guy gets all the money. Wednesday in America. But Rollins says we die from conservative imaginations. I think that's very true. And YouTube member, C. Michael Henson, thank you so much. Someone accidentally opened my passenger door and sat down. Once he realized he was in the wrong car, he immediately apologized. I was caught off guard, but said, no problem. Didn't try to harm him. And one more, Meredith, Relina, Dragon, Putvin. Thank you to you as well. If Majors loses, talking about this is about Jonathan Majors. If Majors loses his MCU role, he's toast. Well, somebody seems like toast, but we'll keep following it. Meredith, we'll keep following it. Iowa Senate passes a pro-child labor bill. What are the details here? I'll tell you, the Iowa legislature went into session earlier Tuesday morning, debating none other than child labor laws with the passing of SF 542, a bill centered around youth employment. In late March, the Iowa Federation of Labor, alongside several other unions, protested at the Iowa State Capitol. That was just one of many protests held around the state in an effort to stop this. It's not stopping, not yet. So exactly what would this bill do, right? Well, the bill would let the directors of the Iowa Department of Education or Iowa Workforce Development grant exceptions, allowing 14 to 17-year-olds to work in jobs currently banned for minors, as long as they are part of an approved training program with adequate supervision and safety precautions. On Tuesday morning, session opened at 3:36 a.m. and the vote on SF 542 in the Iowa Senate happened at 4:52 a.m. It passed by a vote of 32 to 17. All Democrats voted against it, as well as 2 Republicans. Bill allows 14-year-olds to work 6-hour night shifts, allows 15-year-olds to work in plants on assembly lines, moving items up to 50 pounds, and allows 16 and 17-year-olds to serve alcohol. Democrats argue the bill will increase the risk of workplace accidents by exposing inexperienced kids to more dangerous work environments. They tried unsuccessfully to amend the bill to offer additional workers' compensation benefits for teenagers who get injured on the job. This from the Des Moines Register. Iowa Senator Janice Weiner of Johnston spoke out against the bill, saying, I wouldn't want my granddaughter serving alcohol or getting an exception to do hazardous work in the name of workplace learning. A workplace accident can happen in the blink of an eye. Takes mere seconds for a red iron beam to fall. Iowans should not be putting our kids, and they are kids, in dangerous situations. But Iowa Senator Adrian Dickey of Jefferson says this bill, we are strengthening and providing protections to our youth. We are not forcing them into slave labor. We are not selling our children. We are not even requiring them to work. Senate amended the bill early Tuesday to say minors could not serve alcohol in bars Previous version of the bill would have allowed 16 and 17-year-olds to serve alcohol in both bars and restaurants. It was not intended to put minors in Tom's Tavern slinging drinks, rather to allow these youths to work in Renee's restaurant, Dickey said. The Senate also amended the bill Tuesday to clarify that 16 and 17-year-olds cannot work in strip clubs, although Senate Republicans said that has never been allowed under current law. The bill would let kids under 16 work up to 6 hours a day, 2 more than the current maximum of 4 hours a day, and they could work longer into the evening until 9 p.m. during the school year, 11 p.m. during the summer. 16 and 17-year-olds could work the same number of hours per day as adults. It would also create a committee to study the possibility of letting teens 14 and older get a special driver's permit to drive to work. Benny, I think you should speak on all of this first.
Yeah, I mean, this is just deeply shameful. I mean, there's so many layers to this. Like, a part of it goes to what we were talking about earlier, which is really just the attack on youth that we're seeing from the political right now, where, I mean, I guess they think that children are spending too much time paying attention to school or thinking about school or learning things in general, so they want to send them to work. Then it goes to the layer of misogyny that we were talking about earlier, which is, do you understand what having like a 16-year-old serving alcohol would actually look like in real life? There's already a massive problem of people working in the service industry having to deal with a ridiculous amount of sexual harassment from customers. Even more so anytime there's an environment where there's alcohol involved. And so to have a 16-year-old serving alcohol is to put them in an incredibly dangerous situation, right? It is already a dangerous situation if it's just somebody who's 18 that's serving alcohol, much less somebody who is 16, okay? And they are just literally less likely to know how to respond. They're less likely to understand what to do when to respond, like all of these different things. And so then you have the layer of quite literally putting children in active danger by just the hazards of being in different workplaces that have more hazardous conditions, depriving children of sleep by extending the amount of hours that they can work. All of these things are major problems, and it literally cuts into people's ability to get an education, to go and just finish high school. And so really there's so many layers to this, but fundamentally this is an attack on the safety of children. This is an attack on the rights of children to live lives that are comforted and sheltered enough as children that they can just get an education, that they can live their lives and figure out who they want to be when they turn 18 and go to college or whatever. And so it is deeply sickening and shameful that Republicans are willing to put children in this type of danger, especially the fact that they didn't even consider the context of potentially putting 16-year-olds in bars until after they had to go and amend it. But it's even more sickening while at the same time, Republicans are trying to strip what agency like that children should actually have away from them by denying them to have any type of identity, by saying that they're not allowed to mention being gay or trans in school or risk being outed by their teachers. All of this is happening at the same time. We're quite literally, they're trying to force children into the workplace, into dangerous situations, while also denying them to have even the most basic level of agency or autonomy to just say what their name is or what their pronouns are, just basic things like that.
We are going so far back and trying to, what's next? Should we just drive around in a horse and buggy? Because back then, there were no labor laws to protect children, and there were not their property. And it seems that some, and I think you're right, by identifying that they are on the right, believe that children are just property, and that if we need more workers here, or we want to marry them off and maybe get dowry, some money or something. I don't know why these people are insisting in some jurisdictions that at least one in Missouri, a certain rep, that children are such property that you can do with them as you wish, and everyone should stay out of it, while at the same time not allowing children to have any say. I mean, when my daughter, Benny, was just little, I felt that she wasn't my property and she deserved some say. So if she wanted to go out that day with me and put on a red sock and a pink one, and her sweater on backwards, I didn't see what's so wrong with that. Is there something wrong with that? At what point do you listen to a child's wishes and desires. And did anyone even do a focus group on what children maybe want, or talk to people who've had experiences working as children? I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, it boils down to whether or not you think children are property or a responsibility. I think morally decent people view children as a responsibility. And now, granted, that means like you have to do some things for children, and children aren't going to be able to make all the decisions for themselves. But also, like, we do recognize that if you're a parent, you are responsible to your children. You don't own them, and you don't have any right to control literally every single thing that they do, because they're not going to grow up to be healthy if you try to do that anyway. And so, like, fundamentally, it's just all about this mentality of property versus responsibility.
And that's that any parent, I think, and we never get it perfect, but I do feel an enormous responsibility because she didn't ask to be here. It's just, whoever you want to be, I want to support that. As long as you're a good person, you don't have to be me, you don't have to be, just be you. And I think we've got to be supportive of that. But there's a whole group of people out there who are hell-bent on turning children into their little mini-me soldiers. And it's just so sick, exploited, endangered, and it's just so sick. Tell people where they can find you and your wonderful commentary and everything that is gloriously you.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Benjamin Carollo, and you can also check me out on YouTube at TYT Breakdown.
And can we trademark the laugh? I don't know if it's allowed, but I think we should. There it is. I love it, and it should be trademarked. It's beautiful, and so are you, and we appreciate you always. Thank you so much for joining us here on Indisputable, and thank you to Dr. Ritchie for just allowing me to sit in on this beautiful program and interact with so many of you. We hear you. We love your comments. And I just love to be part of something. I feel like I learn something every single time I sit in the chair. Learn a lot of things and a lot more to go. Jonathan Majors, where will that end up? That was our lead story today. Doesn't look good. And we'll keep talking about Hollywood and that, well, disparity in the treatment of others, along with so many other things. Thanks for joining us on Indisputable. I'm Sharon Reed, in for Doc. Appreciate you.